I want you to think about pain. Your skin sizzling with electricity, the little muscles and fibers in your fingers clenching involuntarily, your jaw tensing up and eyes pulling themselves shut as you try to clear your head of a noise of neurotransmitters desperately insisting that something is very wrong. And I want you to imagine for a moment the state of mind you would have to be in to simply not even try to make that pain go away, to just sit there and give up, to accept that the pain was going to happen no matter what you did to try to stop it. I want you to think about being helpless. So late last year, I played Hollow Knight for the first time, and if you've ever played it before, you'll know it's a game about exploration, discovery, losing your way, and then finding it over again, which I did a lot of. But it's also an experience that wasn't afraid to challenge me. The platforming and enemies are tough, but fair. And through the first patch of the game, Team Cherry did a tremendous job of teaching me what to expect. Forgotten Crossroads, the first area, is an excellent tutorial. While wandering around, I found Cornifer, who sold me a map, which made it clear I would be spending a lot of time exploring and likely fighting bosses. Then I found Sly, who opened up a shop in Dirtmouth, and now I had some items to save up for. And of course, I found enemies scattered everywhere, so I knew I'd have to pop some Twisted Teas and a couple of heads before credits would roll. Once I had the hang of the controls, my brain during the first hour of Hollow Knight went something like: kill bug, get money, buy stuff, see new bug, uncover method to defeat it, gain soul during fight, coast is clear, patch up wounds, check map, discover bench, bench is good, we like bench, bench is a friend, he's cute, now he's free, a blockade, explore, find new skill, go back to blockade.
Discombobulate.
Can't see what's below, look down, now I can see where to land. Finding stuff is fun, what's over there? Anger. And the first few areas of Hollow Knight really reinforced that emphasis on discovery and that natural ebb and flow of exploring, encountering and taking out some enemies, healing myself with the soul gathered, then checking my map, deciding where to go, and then continuing on my merry way. It was a delicious time because although I didn't know what exactly was around the corner, I had at least fallen into a rhythm and felt prepared to take on whatever the game threw at me next. If there was a scale between utterly flustered and totally in control, trekking the deep caverns of Hallownest likely set me at around mostly in control, but working against a healthy challenge. I was in that ever so popular flow state that Mihai Csikszentmihalyi popularized and every video game essayist on YouTube has talked about, including me now apparently. And to establish that warm, gooey, and trance-like flow state, feeling in control of what happens is the absolute most necessary sensation a developer can give the player before sending them on their way, at least to me. Difficulty is part of the equation as well, but to feel as though you can actually overcome that difficulty, control is a must. When you run around as Mario, the button inputs are tight and responsive. Playing Odyssey starts to feel like another muscle after a while, which is exactly what you want to confidently tackle the platforming you'll run into. You pick up an RPG, you may have to sit through a lengthy tutorial and fight a few battles, but for the game to be fun, you need to understand what to expect in combat, what strategies work, and which ones don't. And if you get bodied by this thing, you need to understand that you could have rolled out of the way and found a safer window to attack, which you'll get better at with time. That competency of how the game works is something we don't often think about, and is likely why we lose our mind on weak tutorials. Hollow Knight, though, did send me on my way feeling very much confident and equipped with several examples of how its world will work. But it's not until I reached a certain little nook of Hallownest that I realized how deeply valuable that feeling of control is, and how foolish I was to think that that feeling would stick around for my entire descent. Up until that dusty, forgotten corner of the map, I would absolutely feel confident enough to at least try and explore everywhere I could, fight any enemy that I encountered, and run if I found myself in danger. But that little corner changes you. It snares your momentum and tangles up your competence little by little. It slowly and methodically digests your willpower. I'm talking, of course, about Deepnest. If you can think back to when you were a kid and remember that one room in your grandparents' house that you didn't go into at night because something about how unfamiliar the shadows were cast in it or the uncanny stillness of it just didn't sit right with you, then you can imagine what Deepnest felt like to me when I first arrived. I was a lost kid in a long dark hallway, desperately trying to find a light switch. This place just turned my stomach. Now, there was more than one way to get in, but I found it after beating the Mantis Lords, so I saw firsthand that it was purposely being hidden away, not by the game devs per se, but by the Mantises. I saw corpses of troves of bugs that I'd never seen before, all held at bay just outside Mantis Village. Just that little detail told me that I should be very afraid of this place because the Mantises felt it dangerous enough to seal off, and they're no pushovers. Cornifer was shaking in his boots, which I had never seen before. Which, by the way, how the hell did he get in? Did he fight the Mantis Lords? Is he worthy? I don't understand. The visibility in this place was abysmal. The tunnels only seemed to get smaller. The foreground was crawling with every variety of behind-the-fridge hell knows, making me feel surrounded at all times, and the sounds of bugs constantly stirring left me with zero peace for even a moment in this place. And look, I'm no stranger to spooky settings in games. Visually, Deepnest gives me the same vibes as a Bottom of the Well from Ocarina, a Tomb of the Giants from Dark Souls, or an unsettling hallway from Amnesia. Creepy spaces in games aren't uncommon, and I'm a big boy, I can handle being there, but what makes Deepnest truly a twisted experience is much more nefarious and subtle. In the 1960s, psychologist Martin Seligman ran a study to see if an animal could be prepped to learn something before it actually experienced the learning process. Could you condition an animal ahead of time to a stimulus that would speed up its ability to learn later? So, Seligman and his team ran an experiment where they would play a tone for a dog and then immediately follow it up with a light shock. This way, the dog could connect the sound to the shock, and the tone itself would be enough to give a command. A bit cruel, but on the surface, sound reasoning. Next, they would take their pre-trained dogs and a group of untrained dogs and place each of them individually in a box with two sides and a short wall right down the middle. The floors on either side of the box could shock independently of one another. Each dog from either the group of trained or untrained dogs would then sit on one side of their very own shock box. The ding would sound, and then the floor would shock whichever side the dog was sitting on. So naturally, the dog would learn that a ding meant jump the wall and go to the safe side. Seligman figured that the dogs that were pre-trained would catch on faster. However, that's very much not what happened. The pre-trained dogs just sat there and accepted the pain they were in. They would put their head down and whine as the electricity pounded them over and over, despite the fact that they had the ability to make it stop. They could jump to the other side and avoid being shocked if they listened to the ding, or even just jumped out when the shock happened, but they just laid there, helpless, unaware that they had any control over the pain. Meanwhile, the naive dogs that hadn't been pre-trained caught on, 95% of which learned to jump the wall compared to just 1/4 of the pre-trained dogs. So, what's going on here? Were the prepared dogs just tired of getting shocked over and over? Were the fresh dogs just more spry and willing to jump the other side? Well, after a follow-up study where Seligman shocked more dogs, yay, that's great, he confirmed the issue. It was a perception of control. The naive dogs in the study realized that they could jump the barrier to end the sting of the electricity, whereas the pre-trained dogs had no way to make the shocking stop when they were being prepped. It was just ding, take the pain, ding, take the pain. There was no way for them to influence what was happening, so they just took it. They weren't just taught that the sound meant a shock was coming, they were taught that there was no avoiding the shock. They learned helplessness, and once that had happened, they had no reason to try in the second part of the study. They had been trained to expect endless pain, and there was no changing that. And we see this learned helplessness in people too. If you take a classroom of kids and give half of them a list of 3 solvable problems and the other half 2 unsolvable problems followed by a third problem that is solvable, most of the latter half won't even try the third. They've learned from the first 2 questions that they simply can't do it. They can't affect the outcome. Deepnest does not electrocute you, though I wish it would so I can feel anything other than dead inside when I'm there. Nor is it an area that you have no control in, but it is an area that encroaches on that control. What I mean by that is that it takes what the previous areas have taught you and uses that against you. Ordinarily, when you take out all the baddies on screen and you're sitting with a mask or 2 left, you can heal, you've bought yourself a second to breathe. But a lot of times in Deepnest, you haven't. These little dirt carvers spawn out of nowhere and attack you even when you're healing or checking your map, which has never been the case in any area up to this point. Sure, other enemies can attack you during this moment, but not if the coast is clear, not if you've given yourself an opening. In Deepnest, the coast is never clear. You can never let your guard down. To me, it kind of harkens back to Dead Space, where your inventory would be set in-game, not on a pause screen, meaning you actually have to strategize when you checked your stock. You never knew if you were totally safe to be doing this, and the same goes for Deepnest. Much like the dogs couldn't control when they were shocked, you can't control when you're safe anymore. But your rhythm doesn't just get broken there, no. Oh no, there's traps and fake floors everywhere. There is no simple walking and taking in the environment like before, nor is there even sure footing for comfortable platforming. Totally normal looking ground can just come out from under you at any moment to reveal spikes or even just a pit that erases progress. My favorite and least favorite example of this is when you reach one of the higher escapes of Deepnest and you think you've made it out, only to be met with, "What the fuck?" Deepnest almost feels like it's communicating with you, toying with you, constantly outsmarting you and flipping all of your previous assumptions and conditioning on its head. There was this profoundly twisted moment where Deepnest just bullies you. I found this crack in the wall, as you do, so I knocked it down. Behind it, I found one of my little grub buddies. I set him free, and when I tell you this was the most betrayed I had ever felt before, I'm lying, because this was the second most betrayed I'd ever felt behind what happened next. I kill the imposter, and then I find what I'm sure is the real grub. Okay, show's over. You got me, Deepnest. Very funny. And then I wanted to eat my controller. So now I know I'm being played. I'm like Chris in the Fourth Wall video. And then I see 2 grubs left. Then I figure, all right, they expect me to see this one thinking it's the real one, but I see both. So I'm just gonna skip the third and go for the last one. I win this round. You people are psychopaths. Deepnest just continually outwitted me, and it truly felt like I was on a dinner plate, and this ravenous monster that was this sickening quagmire was just playing with its food. I continually lost my confidence and my grip on what this game even was. Was I being electrocuted? No. Did I have zero control over what was happening to me? No, but the inconsistencies and the constant need to be on guard without a real grip on what the hell would happen next slowly wore away at me, as I'm sure it did to you if you experienced Deepnest blind. And I want to be clear here. I wasn't experiencing learned helplessness to the degree those poor puppers were, nor was I experiencing the depression that people who legitimately need counseling to deal with their learned helplessness have, which does happen usually in the context of relationships and employment. But the inconsistencies and stark contrast to the design of the rest of Helplessness did exhaust me and make me feel to a certain degree helpless in a way that a simple difficulty spike may not. And I don't make that claim without evidence. A Polish study in 1990 tried to induce helplessness in subjects by having them solve tasks with inconsistent information. It was basically like they were playing 20 questions to try and figure out what shape the experimenter wanted them to guess. Is it a triangle? Is it striped? Etc., etc. The control condition, of course, was given accurate feedback to their questions, but the participants who were set to be taught helplessness had a random chance of being lied to, which would make guessing the shape a bit difficult. Sometimes they'd guess right, sometimes they'd guess wrong, but ultimately they were taught their questions only helped them get the right answer sometimes. And through 3 variations of this experiment, the researchers found that 1. Information inconsistency impairs future performance on similar tasks. 2. Induced helplessness training arouses a mixture of negative emotions, including anger, anxiety, sadness, and self-dissatisfaction. And 3. The inconsistencies induced a cognitive exhaustion, in addition to a drop in intrinsic motivation. The subjects had a bad time when they felt they only had a loose control over the outcome of their tasks. And that's exactly what I'd argue the average player is getting when they sign up for a stroll through Deepnest. Now, naturally, playing Deepnest is still playing Hollow Knight. You can still kill stuff, still heal, still use your map, and still have control of your fate, but all of the assumptions you have about how the enemies and the environment work suddenly become very incongruent with what you're now experiencing. The way dirt carvers ambush you then sometimes retreat, which other enemies have never done, the way dead enemies regenerate as zombified spiders and hunt you down at an extremely uncomfortable speed, except when they don't and you aren't sure if it's safe to heal or not, because what if it does come back? The sudden shock of seeing a little weaver attack you from the foreground of all places, how in a game about exploring you sometimes are punished for exploring with dead ends that may be traps, how in taller rooms you can't look down to check where you're going to land because it's too dark and you have no guarantees of landing safely, when you accidentally stumble upon yourself, or how when you finally find what seems to be the purpose of your miserable journey through this web of agony, you come to find some very hospitable folks and a bench. A bench, which you've been taught is the most relieving thing you can find. It updates your map, saves your game, heals you, and lets you swap out charms. And if you're like me, your silly monkey brain just said, discover bench. Bench is good. We like bench. Bench is a friend. Or maybe you thought this whole setup was too good to be true and a little unsettling, in which case, good on you. But either way, you sit. And then the game doesn't save, and hitting buttons doesn't do anything. And then the music changes, and those nice folks surround you. All of these inconsistencies and subverted expectations begin to distort your perception of your say-so and what happens to you. You have to stay on edge. You can't trust anything. Much like the subjects of the induced helplessness training earlier, your performance is slipping, you're emotionally taxed, and you're cognitively exhausted. The belief you have in your ability to do anything about this is slipping. And look, maybe Deepnest wasn't all that bad to you. That's fine. I hope you still enjoy the video anyways. But I know I can't be the only one who was so affected by this place. One last thing about the Polish study from a moment ago I'd like to add is that they found these effects both when the subjects had previously gone through the helplessness training and when they had not gone through it but were repeatedly told their answers were wrong, even if they were actually right. In other words, the inconsistent info is every bit as detrimental, if not more harmful, than just straight up repeated failure. A steep difficulty curve can be frustrating and might feel unfair, but I don't look at Deepnest as extraordinarily difficult per se. I played through it a second time to get this footage, and when you know what to expect, it's not all that tough. You just have to be on guard. But that first time though, when you don't have any idea of what you're getting yourself into, feels like a steep difficulty curve. By using what you've learned against you all at once, it almost creates the illusion of difficulty. It feels like bullshit that so much is changing all of a sudden. But I think that's kind of the point. This isn't just another area in a Metroidvania, it's a sinister web. A giant trap, just waiting for you to come knocking on the door with your head held high, feeling prepared for what comes next. But what you get is a maddening descent into hesitation and confusion. What you get is a living, breathing vortex of pandemonium waiting to outsmart you and snare your progress at every turn. What you get may very well be a disorienting feeling of desperation, bewilderment, and maybe even helplessness. Hey gang, Happy New Year. I hope your 2021 has gotten off to a delicious start. I want to let you know real quick that this video was originally going to be about arachnophobia. I even found a study on how exposure to Spider-Man and Ant-Man may help treat phobias to bugs, and how VR games with spiders in them may do the same, which is fascinating, but terrifying. I don't think I'm built to face those fears, personally, but the studies are still in the description if you're curious. Anyways, thank you so very much as always for watching my work, and a gargantuan thank you to my Patreon supporters, especially this month's lucky featured patrons, Jonathan Miller, Sam Bruns, Mario Banus, hope I said that right, Ruben Massacoy, Jeremy Yanofsky, Matthew Brereton, Stacy Belair, and my boy Steven Boutwell. If you'd like to join these charming folks on screen or have a chance to be a future featured patron, hit that orange link on screen and come on over to join the party. Take care, guys. See you real soon for a Psych of Play on personality, and have yourself a damn good one.